am welcoming in my brother, Mr. Chris Arnold, to the show. How we doing, man?
Doing well, brother. I'm grateful to be able to be here and spend this time with you today. So,
It's
yeah.
going to be fun, man. I know, one, I'm very excited to see you tomorrow. When this airs, obviously, we'll have already hung out and had our fun in Tulum, which is obviously where you've been. How long have you been out in Tulum now?
So June would be 7 years.
Wow.
And that's, when people are here 6 months to a year, that's considered long. So at 7 years, like I'm an OG. People are like 7 years because Tulum is very transient by nature. So
Yeah, why Tulum and why stay as long as you have? I don't know
yeah.
if I've ever asked you that.
So I came to Tulum to get away. I was going through a very difficult point in my marriage. And I had a couple friends go, bro, I think the best thing is just to like go clear your head. And before that, I had two or three people mention Tulum. At that point, no one knew what Tulum was, right? It's not
Yeah,
like,
this was before it was trendy and sexy.
yeah, exactly. And so I was like, I heard about this place, Tulum, I'll go down. And so I came down, but two things happened. Number one, I got the answer to what I was looking for in that particular time of my struggle. But B, I absolutely fell in love with this place. And within 3 months from my first time down here, I was living here full time. And I haven't left because A, I've always wanted to live a Caribbean lifestyle. But through the process of telling this story, I now realize that I'm here for such a deeper purpose. I was meant to be here, and this place, when I say place, not just the place, but the people inside of it, ended up saving my life, this community. So Tulum means a lot to me.
I can see that. I can hear it. And I can't wait to experience it with you here very soon. So you said some things in there that I think people are going to go, okay, saved his life, some, major, obviously, transitions and things that have transpired that I know we'll uncover in today's conversation and how it can impact other hard charging entrepreneurs, men, individuals who probably share in a lot of these same sentiments or struggles. When you and I first met, so if you moved out to Tulum 7 years ago, I met you when you were living in DFW still.
So I got here in 2017. Do you remember when we met?
We meet earlier in 2017 or was it 16?
I don't remember. I'm not good when it comes to years like that.
I thought you like knew the day and time or
February of
something.
1988. I'm like, I don't know how people's brain. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't have that photographic memory, but I do recall us connecting at Matt Andrews, real estate influencers event, and we hit it off at lunch. And you were building a massive wholesaling business. You were taking over, I think, another wholesaling company and platform at the time, and so you were all in on building business, scaling real estate, doing deals. Talk a little bit about that life before you shifted and felt this calling to move in a very radically different direction. And what most people would say, what the heck are you doing going that way when you've got this big empire over here?
So I got into real estate in 2005, right out of grad school. I got in at that point because I was looking for a vehicle to give me some freedoms that were very important to my value structure. And that's freedom of time, freedom of location, freedom of resources. I was raised within a Christian family, and I actually got a master's degree in theology. So I kind of been groomed by choice in a way, but also by conditioning, just from the way I was raised, to spend the rest of my life figuring out how to help people. And I fell in love with the concept of social entrepreneurism because when I was in that world of people that wanted to help people vocationally, I realized that a lot of those people were struggling because they were going the route of, like, let's just say the nonprofit. You got to raise the money, right? You got to find a challenge and get people to connect with it at a heartfelt level. And that's one way to do it, so that they give to that cause. But for me, I got a vision, and so funny. I've done a lot of interviews on podcasts, but it comes up so much. It affected an entire generation. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Mm.
And for the first time, I realized that, hey, I could build a business where I could write the checks myself. So from the very beginning, it was all about that. It was all about putting me in that position. So for 19 years, so we're getting to present day, I did everything from real estate brokerage to real estate investment. So wholesaling, fix and flip. This is all out of the DFW area. At that time, I built a mastermind. I bought an education company. I had to sell the education company. So typical, like anyone that's in the real estate industry kind of moves through somewhat of that path, right? And so I had charted the real estate course and had done all the different things that were available to me. And so that's kind of to catch you up on my real estate background.
Are you still doing any real estate?
I am completely out. And I, at this point, don't ever think I'll go back. It's because, I mean, as you hear the story, I think it'll make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
How I could not go back to that, because there's something else that I'm called to that is, I feel like, really my unique contribution. So real estate, I feel like, set me up for my unique contribution.
It allowed you to kind of build some wealth, create a platform.
But to explore, because in your story that I'm going to tell, you're going to hear how I lose everything, all of it, every bit of it, down to my sanity. I lost everything plus my sanity. So for the time I had it, it did. It put me in a position to explore things and to do things and so forth. So I'm very grateful for the purpose that it served. But for me, it's not my vehicle. It got me to my unique contribution, which I understand now for the years forward.
And you could have stayed in that mining in that vein as long as you wanted to, but there was obviously something that called you outside of it, something that pulled you to Tulum. What at that point in time, because I think a lot of people can relate, right? To going, I've got this over here looking really good on the outside, and yet I've got a lot of these things on the inside that just don't feel right, whether it's my marriage, whether it's my health, whether it's my community, whether it's, all of these other things that, maybe skeletons in the closet that we as human beings don't always want to, talk about or face or discuss. Like, what was it for you? And I just want to preface for those that are listening, Chris is a buddy of mine. I've heard this story. Not many people have heard this story. And I am honoring you for being as transparent and sharing this, because I know, being around a lot of hard charging men and women, how many people struggle in silence and suffer in silence, and how debilitating that can be and how heavy that can be. And I think, I love this quote by Jesse Itzler that he said, every year I reflect back on my life, and if there's anything that feels heavy, I really try and figure out how I can make my life feel lighter. Like, life is too beautiful to feel heavy all the time. And yet life finds a way to just stack a bunch of shit on top of us, and we carry these heavy loads on our shoulders. And oftentimes we do it by ourselves, or we do it in silence. And your story and your journey, I think, is one, very relatable, and two, so beautiful in the sense that you're going to share, obviously, how you've transitioned through this. But what was it that really kind of called you down a different path, and why did you listen and pursue it when you had everything else on the outside looking like it was great?
So I think a light word would be a calling. Man, I went through a stripping. My life went through a paper shredder. And so in some ways, what I'm doing is something that I experienced that I was, in a good way, pulled to do. And in some ways, like, had no option but to do, because for me, my journey has led me here. You did ask a question a little bit earlier. I don't know if you want me to ask it, but it seemed like what was coming of, what was that thing in my closet? What was that thing that was, starting to take me off the path?
Yeah.
For me, it began with dishonesty. I had cheated on my wife, and I lied about it. And I would hold on to this lie for years. living in a sense of fear that if people know this about me, they'll reject me. And at that time of my life, I was very, very much caught up in needing the validation of people. I'm one of those individuals that is likable by nature, so I can build a lot of relationships. So I'm the type of person that if one person didn't like me, I would pine over it and go out of my way to win that human being back. So the idea of disclosing something like this was going against the very thing of my identity and my validation and my self-worth. Yeah. And as the quote would say, that I think really hit it home for me is, when you're honest, you only have to be scared once, but when you lie, you have to be scared all the time. So I was living in fear of, if this comes out, what's going to happen? And the longer you hold it, when it comes out, the greater destruction it's going to have. But for me, I took that risk because at that point, my reputation was more important to me than my character and my authenticity.
How many people do you feel like struggle with that, as you've shared more in confidence with certain people and you've done so much work? Like, how relatable is that to the average everyday human? Maybe they didn't, lie and cheat on a significant other or something like that. But when you think about how many people on a daily basis lie, like how slippery of a slope is that? And how did you start to face that part of yourself and do work in being honest?
Yeah. So there's kind of two ways I can answer that question, right? It's kind of a twofold question. Like, I think a lot of people relate with what I'm talking about that are listening right now? And number two, how did I turn the corner and get to a place of moving from dishonesty to transparency, right? I think that, and this is what I'm learning, because I was not trauma informed at the time. And we don't live in America as much of a trauma informed culture. But the reality is, I can give you an overview of what's happening in most of us right now. And I'm going to speak to male entrepreneurs because you're my tribe that are listening. We have these behaviors in our life, and they're behaviors that we're not proud of. And these behaviors can look like all kinds of things. Self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, workaholism. It can be overeating. It can be pornography. And it's not just like the addictive stuff. It's any type of behavior that is bringing us a sense of shame and is bringing us a sense of, basically feeling like we're out of control. And Dr. Gabor Mate really hit it home when he said, when you see a behavior, the question is not to ask why the behavior, the question is to ask why the pain. Because when you begin to realize that these behaviors in your life are basically existing because you are wanting relief from a pain inside of you that you don't understand, that begins to allow yourself to begin to look at yourself differently, rather than through this shame and judgment and guilt. And of course, if people know about these behaviors, we live in a culture that shame people for these behaviors. Why don't you just stop? Why can't you just control it? Right. What's wrong with you? And so we're heaped in shame. And this is why we lie. This is why we keep it quiet, because of the judgment that we lay upon ourselves and the judgment, unfortunately, that we receive. And sometimes the greatest judgment is from those in our family, which is so hard because their voice is so loud to us. But underneath that behavior is pain. And where is that pain coming from, right? That pain is coming from one of two places. It's coming from childhood wounds that we picked up when we lived in a dependency on our family, right? This is true for all of us. But trauma can also be inherited. So epigenetics scientifically now shows that trauma travels generationally through your genes. So you can be dealing with sensations and behaviors, feelings in your body that are not even yours. They're undealt with trauma from generations past. Science now shows this. So all of a sudden, you're having these feelings within your body. And for us as men, you overlay a masculine American culture that says men don't cry, suck it up. We use misogynistic language. Don't be a pussy. Don't be X. Don't be X. And we punish each other. And we're punished by our culture when we begin to express weakness, because in American culture, weakness is not considered masculine. It's considered feminine. So don't be weak. Don't cry, right? So this also pushes men into isolation. And we talk about lying. The question is, it's like, well, you're lying. It's like, what is driving that behavior? People by nature don't want these behaviors in their life. They feel shameful for them. So it's not like people are going around saying, I want to be this way. You have to realize people are operating out a sense of pain. So underneath this trauma lies a core sentence or a core belief. And this core belief exists in many, many, many of us. And it's unconscious. And when you're able to bring it to a level of consciousness, it changes everything. Because then you begin to understand why you have the behaviors that you have in your life that you don't understand why they're manifesting in the way that they are. And basically, we all have versions of this core sentence. And the core sentence is this: I'm not enough. I'm not enough. For me, that would play out of I'm inadequate. Mm-hmm. I'm defective. People are going to leave me. And basically what ends up happening until this trauma is dealt with, our life then begins to be basically a recycling of this trauma. It manifests in our life and in our marriages and in our businesses and everything. And so you want to look around and look at how this affects our culture that's listening, because again, this can play out in different ways in different cultures, but the way it plays out in the male entrepreneurial culture is through high achievement. We develop what's called a performance-based esteem. Because I'm not enough, in order to try to feel like enough, I feel like I need to perform to get validation in order to fulfill and fill this emptiness that's inside of me. And for men, we're different than women when it comes to pain. Women, generally speaking, internalize pain. We as men externalize it. So when you see things in your life like anger and rage, right? Grandiosity, which you see a lot in male entrepreneurs, this is stemming from an underlying overt and covert depression. And that depression underneath it is this core sentence that I'm not enough. I'm not enough. So to answer the second part of your question, how did I make this turn? Well, you make the turn by one of two places. And for anyone listening, I hope it's not the first. I hope it's the first and not the second. This change happens because of choice, through awareness, right? Listening to a talk like this. Or unfortunately, in my situation, it happened through catastrophe. I had to lose everything. I had to go and get to a place that it was so bad that after 19 years, and as my life is beginning to unravel, and all the suppression of 19 years, grind, drive, suppress the emotion. And for most of us that are listening, we feel like emotion and feelings are like an obstacle. So we suppress them, right? And I did this for 19 years in the pursuit of discipline and to be what I thought being a masculine man was all about. And, after 19 years, things are beginning to unravel in my life. My trauma is playing out, and it's played out a few times. So now I'm going through a divorce, AKA, which I'm saying earlier is like, I'm not enough. They're going to leave me. My core trauma is they're going to leave me. And again, just to back that up, if you want to get specific, that stemmed from what we call broken attachment with my mom. And this is for all of us. If we have a broken attachment with our mom, who's there to soothe us when we're not well, and has whatever's going on in her life, if we're not getting what's called attachment, which is her attention, then the conclusion that we come up with as childs because we're dependent is not there's something wrong with my mom. We're too small. What comes up for us is there's something wrong with me, which then translates into I'm not enough. I'm not enough. And this goes all the way in to basically from the time that you're born, because you start developing somatic memory at a month old. So things like, I mean, I won't go too deep into it, but basically you have an understanding that if you're dealing with this, I'm not enough, one of the things I would tell you to look at is the relationship you have with your mom. And were there periods of time that you were not attached to her for whatever reason? Alcoholism, there was a divorce, right? Whatever it occurs. And so for me, 19 years later, I find myself all of this coming out, all of it. And I'm basically in Honduras, right? I'm on a multipliers trip, which was a brotherhood that I was running at the time. And I had built this brotherhood for high achieving entrepreneurs to provide an environment for them to talk about the hard shit. Yet I was lying.
Crazy.
The leader himself.
The irony in that.
It's not the irony of it all, right? And so basically, I'm having to go through the most difficult financial business challenge in my life, which was basically to have to resell a company I bought a year and a half before, and now it's failing. And this was a public purchase, so not something I can hide. And because my value comes from people's validation, I'm more concerned about what people will think than even the financial loss I'm going through. That tells you like how backwards my thinking was. And it's not even my thinking, it's your feelings, it's your emotions. These are things that are not even sensical at a certain point, right? And so as I'm in Honduras, we having to deal with the week of the sell. I had just gone through, I mean, basically there's nothing left in the tank. I am not about to be burnt out. I am burnt the fuck out. Yeah. There's nothing left. And I'm having to deal with the biggest challenge of my life. And because there's nothing left in my body starts shutting down. And it starts shutting down by throwing me into panic attacks. And I'm in Honduras on this multipliers trip, and we're down there doing philanthropic work to build a church. And it just so happens that the week of the sale of the company was the week I had to be in Honduras. So now I'm dealing with the sell, and if anyone understands or have ever sold, it is very stressful. And this is not in a good way, like I'm cashing out money. Yeah. I am losing it, having to pay private lenders out of my personal pocket to make them well. This is like life-changing financially for me in the other direction. And so I start having these anxiety attacks. And being an American culture who has obviously been inundated by big pharma, the thought is very simple. Well, we just need to get him some medication. I agree. Well, if you have anxiety, what do? You take what's called a benzodiazepine. And a benzodiazepine is also known as Valium, Xanax, Klonopin, and Ativan. So I take this medication, and unfortunately, I have an adverse effect. And because I'm in Honduras, there's no telling what was inside of it. I didn't think about it at the time, but living in Mexico, I should have, because I know in the pharmacies, it's not like the US. A little different. Basically, in 48 hours, I go into onset depression. I just think it's circumstantial, though. I remove myself from the group. My friends, these are my brothers. These are people I've known for years, like 10 years. And I am completely shut down and isolating and basically hiding while I'm there. And I can hide because I got to deal with the sale of this company. So I can go hide in the room, right? It gives me reason not to be out on the job site. But the last couple of days, once the sale is done, I go out on the job site. And at this point, there's no prescription amount given to me. So I don't know how much a doctor would prescribe, but I'm taking, start like at a pill to like a pill and a half. And I would imagine probably a prescription could have been half a pill. So I'm taking more. So what that does, being out in a hot sun, as much stress that I'm under, I go into what's called a benzos hallucination. Now, I don't know it's a hallucination. I have a theological background, so I think I'm having a vision from God. I'm not seeing anything, I'm not hearing anything, but I move to the observer. And what I mean by that is I am now out of body, and I am being led by some type of energy and voice in my head. And I hear three things. Chris, there's absolutely no way out of this situation that you're in. None whatsoever. But this is what benzos, I'll call benzo short for benzodiazepines, do. They exacerbate everything to the nth degree. Now, I knew a way out, but now in my mind, there's no way out. My life is over. The second thing that happens is this self-hatred and condemnation sets in at a level I have never experienced in my life. Basically, what I heard was, Chris, you're an absolute piece of shit. You're a fraud. And then moments of my life started playing out, and the way that I was depicting it was everything in my life had been done out of ill will. All of it. There was no good in me whatsoever. Zero. Now, again, going through my theological bucket, right? God is like trying to reveal my sin to me, right? And then the last thing I hear basically is, Chris, you're going to go back tonight and you're going to get to your room. You're going to grab the couple boxes of Xanax you have and you're going to swallow them all, get in a pool, and kill yourself. Now, I've never had suicidal ideations in my life. I have no mental history, a case of any type of mental health issues whatsoever. I'm grateful for that. So this is coming out of nowhere. And this is what benzodiazepines can do. And so what happened? I did it. I swallowed all those Xanax. I got in a pool. And I blacked out before, as I just started getting in the pool. That's the last memory I have. But fortunately, and you can imagine this.
We're with you, buddy.
In the middle of the night, luckily one of the guys there heard me thrashing around the pool trying to get out. And my brothers, my friends, my male entrepreneur guys had to fish me out of a pool, middle of the night. And I woke up the next day.
Take your time.
I woke up the next day in a Honduras hospital, covered in shame and guilt, not understanding why I did what I did. I didn't have any understanding that benzodiazepines create massive suicidal ideation, that there are thousands of people that are taking their lives because of this medication within the US, bought from an actual reputable pharmacy. So it's not just a Honduras thing.
Yeah.
I don't know this, and neither does anyone that knows me. And it's going to be 7 months before I understand that most of this came, or pretty much all of it came, from this medication. Now, here's the interesting part of my story. I have to take full responsibility for my life and everything that I did that got me to a place that I was having anxiety attacks, and the best thing we thought to do was take medication. That's on me. That's my choices, but also I have mercy and grace on that because a lot of that is driving from my trauma. Completely unconscious to me.
Yeah.
I don't know this, right? So I don't judge myself, I think probably the way that people that are listening are and the way that I used to. I used to judge myself heavily for these behaviors. And so what we decided to do is I go back home to Dallas and to be with my family. And as I'm waking up in the morning, my body is convulsing and now I can't formulate sentences. This is a scary situation for my family and my friends. And again, this is going like wildfire. My multipliers guys of 50 guys, employees, friends, family, all of it. And everyone is just trying to do the best they can to come to the rescue and help. It's what you do when someone falls, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I was drowning, and this is not anyone's fault at all. No one knew how to save me because no one understands this stuff. They weren't informed. Neither was I. I wouldn't have known how to help someone in this situation. So the decision is made that I need to be sent somewhere to doctors because my family were like, we don't know what to do. They're scared. Like, we have to send you somewhere. So in the American system, where do you send someone? You send them to a rehabilitation center. And so I went to one of the top rated facilities in the country, one of these, what they call luxury, $70,000 for 6 weeks. And before I go into this, I'm not saying that all of these places are bad. There's some great places. I am just sharing my experience of what happened to me. I cannot speak for any other individual cases through these rehab centers. I can only tell you what happened in my situation. So when I showed up there, the same things happened when I woke up in the morning. I'm convulsing and shaking and I can't formulate sentences. Now at this point, we don't know as a family, like, did the benzos do something to my brain for taking that many? What happens when you take 2 boxes of Xanax to the brain? I don't know. How long was I underwater for? How much water did I take on? Did I potentially have some form of brain damage? We don't know, right? We got a couple variables here. Mm-hmm. Thirdly, did Chris have a mental breakdown? Which will be the belief of this story for 7 months that I had an act, like I just snapped, like I fucking snapped, right? And so there's confusion. So when I get there and I wake up in the rehabilitation center, they're like, what's wrong with you? And I go, I don't know what's wrong with me. It's why I'm here. You tell me. Well, we're going to send you in to see a psychiatrist. So they send me immediately to see a psychiatrist. And within 1 meeting, I walk out on 5 prescription drugs. Now, remind you, I told them I've never taken prescription drugs in my life. I'm on Klonopin. I'm on lithium. I'm on Zoloft. I'm on baclofen, basically antipsychotics, antidepressant medicine. Well, shit, now I got a lot of variables. If anyone knows about split testing,
yeah,
we're way beyond split testing now, right?
Yeah.
So what ends up happening, though, and this is where it went awry. How this happened, I do not know. But they did not continue me on a benzodiazepine, which they should have. So what that means is now I'm going to start going into benzos withdrawal. Now, remind you, I wasn't in benzos withdrawal in Honduras. That was a negative onset effect. Now I'm going into benzos withdrawal. Benzos withdrawal is worse than heroin withdrawals, to put it into perspective for anyone that's listening. It is the most god-awful thing that I have ever experienced in my life, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Mentally, it's psychosis. You feel like you're absolutely crazy, which I was. I basically lost my sanity, right? Physically, you just want to rip the skin off of your body. You want to literally do whatever you can. And it's so bad you become suicidal now at this point biologically, because you're suffering at such a pain level that you're like, fuck it.
Right.
I'd rather be dead, because you can't stop the pain. You can't stop it. And mind you, I'm going to be in this state for 7 months until we figure out what's going on. Day after day. Now, there's windows in which I'll be okay, but I'll explain how that happened. And then emotionally, it just feels like you're completely void of any type of serotonin, endorphins, positive feelings, and your brain is only producing negative emotions in your body. It's sickening, and you're looping. If anyone has ever had a bad drug trip and thought you were going to die, but luckily you wake up the next morning and you realize like you're okay, it's a great feeling, but when you had it, it was scary. Basically, the way I can describe it is I woke up the next day and it wasn't gone. A month later, it wasn't gone. 7 months, I'm basically in what felt like a bad LSD trip. And so at that point, when they sit me down, they diagnose me based on my side effects of benzos, with our depression, anxiety, and psychosis. But they're telling me that I'm the root of it. So now me and my family are being told by doctors that I have this. Of course, I come from a family that you trust the doctors, take the medication. This is how America is raised for the most part. Yep. They're a doctor. They know what they're talking about. And people, I think, in America are coming to terms with the fact that maybe that's not the healthiest view at all times, that we maybe need to be more cautious and ask more questions and not trust so blindly.
Green.
So because of that, I start to go into benzos withdrawal. And what happens is, in a very easy way to explain it, your neurotransmitters stop firing, because benzos take over the firing of your neurotransmitters. And in my case, when I tried to get off of it, my brain didn't pack up the responsibility. So basically, I can't function. I can't function. I can't go to group. I can't get out of my bed. I can't, you know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, the psychiatrist that I had viewed it as me not willing to do the work and told my family the same thing. So now I just think I'm the biggest absolute wimp in the world. And everyone is rooting me on. Yeah, I realize Chris is going to get well and come back and be the best leader he can be for multipliers. And in the meantime, people are running my businesses, taking over. My brother has power of attorney over my life. They were scared to make decisions for me because they don't know what's going to happen. So everyone is doing the best they can to manage my outside world while I'm in this place. But after a week, they sit me down, or this particular psychiatrist did, and he said, "You're not going home and you're not staying here. We're moving you because obviously you don't want to do the work, and I got a line of people that want to be in here." And mind you, I'm on psych watch. So I have someone walking around writing everything I'm doing down every 15 minutes. Certain nights, someone's in my room while I'm sleeping, and every 15 minutes I can hear a click of a pen. Mind you, I'm in a state of heroin withdrawal with paranoia. This is rocket fucking fuel. I don't know these people. And in these places, there's people going up and down the halls yelling, people cutting themselves. Bro, like 6 weeks before, I was in Portugal on vacation. And now I'm here. My mom.
Like, how is this even possible?
My mind could not comprehend that fall that fast. How does this happen? So they two-man escorted me to basically a higher level facility. I had no choice. Now I'm freaking out. Like, I can't get out of this system. Like, I volunteered to go in. This isn't even like a psych hospital. This is a rehabilitation center that you see advertised. They're not letting me out. I can't, I want to go. I'm telling them I want to go. You're not going home. They're telling my family this. And so basically they send me in. On the ride there, I'm about 7 days into withdrawal. I go into what's called the acute phase, which kicks in around 7, 8, 9, 10 days. And so now I'll go into what becomes a 2-week full-blown hallucination that this place is actually out to get me, have handed whatever information over to the FBI. Now, I don't have any specific in my mind of what it is. I just believe that they're against me. And they're sending me there to hand me over to the FBI so that I'll go to prison for the rest of my life. I'll never forget that car ride watching the sunset. Believing, doesn't matter if it's true or not, your emotions, your body, and your mind believe it. It is actually the same. That was the last time I was ever going to see the sun. I thought they were going to pull up and there was going to be FBI. I thought they were driving me straight to jail. I was surprised when I showed up at the rehab facility. And it took them forever to check me in because I didn't want to go in. I was like, I want to leave. And like, I was under the impression I couldn't. It was just mass confusion. And they got me in, and for 4 days, I went now into insomnia, and I don't sleep for 4 days. And I just lay in that room waiting for them to take me off to the FBI. 4 days. I am as fucked up can be at this point, right? Completely traumatized. And so a psychiatrist comes in and says, "You want to get out and take a walk?" And I knew they were going to walk me to the FBI. Like, I could literally, there were cars out in the parking lot. So she's going to walk me. And I'm paranoid. I'm looking around. She's like, "What's wrong? Why are you paranoid? Do you think someone's after you?" And like, I'm not going to tell them like what I think is happening. I'm just ready to go. Literally, I took off my shorts and put on my pants because I didn't want to be cold when they took me to jail. Like, no joke. This is how my brain is thinking. And we take one lap around the track that they had out there in the sun. I can barely make it, just like Honduras, right? The sun, the dehydration. And when I get in, somehow there's a bunch of patients in there, and the way everyone is sitting looks like it's a sting operation and they're FBI. So I literally go down and sit in front of the guy who I think's in charge, who's just a patient. And I'm like, what do I need to do to hand myself over? And it's funny how things just get misinterpreted because he's just another patient there. He looks at me and goes, "I don't know. What do you think you should do?" Now I think the FBI is like screwing with me at this point. So basically for 2 weeks, I'm in a room and I don't want to come out. I pace a room for 2 weeks straight. I don't want to go down the hall because that's where all the FBI agents are. And it gets so exacerbated that basically I feel they're videoing everything I do, even in the shower, that they're monitoring and recording everything. And it's so exacerbated that I think that literally like the bathroom fan that's running is actually a news helicopter above the roof. And this is being broadcasted to the US. And Matt, you're getting calls from our friends going, turn on CNN. Chris is part of a sting operation. That's how exacerbated it got.
Wow.
So after a couple of weeks, they sat me down and they said, hey, we need to give you another medication. I'm like, whatever I need to do to cooperate. And I keep telling them what I need to do to cooperate. There's no like real debunking, like occasional, like we're not at, you know what I'm saying, but it's not registered. And so they give me what's called Ativan. And Ativan is the strongest medication that you can take as a benzos. It is the strongest, way stronger than Xanax. And basically I take it and I get too much and I turn into Dennis Menace and I'm basically running around the facility throwing paper wads at nurses. Smacked one on the ass. And when I start to come down, I believe it's a truth serum. I believe they're drugging me to make me look like a mockery. So this turns into a 5-day standoff in my room where I won't take that medication. Absolutely not. They're coming in 2 by 2 every couple hours, cornering me. They can't put it in your mouth, but they can put it in your hand and force it to your mouth. Remind you again, 6 weeks before this, I'm in Portugal. Now people corner me in a room just repeating the same thing. Take the medication, take the medication. I'm in benzos withdrawal, worse than heroin withdrawals. I'm not in a bed with my family. I don't know these people. These people don't me. And the more I try to talk my way out of it, the crazier I just look, right? I run businesses. I promise. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And of course you get disheveled because you can't shave because they're not going to give you, I mean, you just start falling apart. I'm starting to look the part, right? I can't cut my hair. I can't do anything, right? I'm looking like I'm crazy at this point. And the way that I popped out of it was, fortunately, I had a therapist, a woman, who looked at me and she started crying. And she stopped being a doctor and she started being a mother. And I'll never forget it. She wrapped her arms around me and she whispered in my ear, we're not after you. We're trying to save your life. And it was the sincerity in her eyes. That was the first seed. And within 48 hours after that, I could unravel the whole thing. And the best way I can describe it is if you ever watch The Sixth Sense and you get to the end and you realize Bruce Willis is dead and they replay every scene, you realize you misinterpreted the whole movie. It's exactly what happened for 2 weeks. I misinterpreted everything. Now, at this point, I just want out of this place. So I negotiate with them to take half the amount they gave me. And when I take it, of course, my neurotransmitters are firing. So that happens. I lie, I manipulate, whatever I got to do to get out of this place and get home to my family. If I can just get to my dad. My dad is everything to me. I don't have my mom at this point. She died when I was 18, but I have a beautiful stepmom. Yesterday was 25 years that she's been my step. I just want to get home to them. I want to get home to them. So basically, I talk my way out, but before I leave, they say, you're going with all these prescriptions. It's very important that you take every one of these. They emphasize that again and again. Take this medication. We cannot emphasize that to you enough. But we can't send you home on the Ativan. So we're going to basically take you through a tapering system over 7 days. And so that's what happened. And to give you an idea, people take 17 months to get off Xanax. So I'm now off Ativan and I go home on a plane and we have no idea about what's to hit because now I'm going to go into Ativan withdrawals, not Xanax withdrawals. I'm on the fetal position on the floor, screaming. I thought I was going to die. Felt like my brain was hemorrhaging. I wanted them to call an ambulance. When my parents would go to sleep at night, I was digging through knife drawers, trying to figure out how to cut my wrist, not because I wanted to die, because I biologically couldn't take the pain. We're a couple months into this now. I'm biologically breaking down, right? And being in the place that I was in, I was not eating those type of things, so I'm emaciated. Like I'm messed up physically. I don't even look like myself. I'm screwed up. And so after a week or two of that, my family doesn't know what to do again. So we need to send you to another place. This place is for specifically mental breakdowns. No, absolutely not. You're not sending me to another place. Chris, you have to do something. Again, this is out of love. My parents don't know what to do. What else do you do? Where do you send someone like this, particularly your child? Like, think about what my parents are thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. And at this point, there's a lot of rumors for why I'm like this that are starting to arise, right? And I have a drug background in my youth, right? So it's like, what has Chris been doing? And it's just like the rumor mill is just running. So I start in a very like small circle start to be like, maybe he's like a closet addict. Maybe this is all because he was doing, you know what I'm saying? People just trying to figure out, well, how does this happen? How does this happen to someone?
Yeah.
Right?
Someone of your caliber, like you said, multi-million-dollar businesses, real estate portfolio, traveling in Portugal to being in a facility like that in 6 weeks.
Exactly.
People love to cast judgment, make assumptions. And how were you handling that while you were going through all of this physical, emotional, mental trauma on a 24/7 basis?
So what does the person do? The type of personality like mine that pines away over one person not liking them, and now he's disappointed everyone. It fucking broke me, bro. It broke me.
Was that a good thing?
Yeah, but brother, it was painful.
Mm-hmm.
Painful for those cords to be cut, to try to figure out where my value comes from. If I am no longer a CEO, if I'm no longer Mr. Multiplier, if I no longer have this financial status, if my reputation is gone, if it's all gone, what value do I have? What's left?
What'd you uncover?
I had to go through a radical process to understand the danger in building my life and my security on things that can be taken away from me. Because that's what we do.
All of us do. Everybody.
Everyone does it. Even the things that we're supposed to love, like our children and our spouse. Because reality, if they become our identity and our whole sense of value, when they're gone, it destroys us. And basically that's what happened, bro. When it all got destroyed, I got destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Completely annihilated. And so I began a long journey of going inward. Now, this wouldn't happen until I get out of the benzos withdrawal, which is still going to be about 4 or 5 months later. But things in my life started being stripped. And that within itself was one of the greatest gifts I could ever receive. And not everyone goes through a process like this to get to this point. It's part of why I'm telling the story. I told you by listening, if you're listening, it's by choice or catastrophe. This is catastrophe. When you don't listen, when you push it off. And so at that point, going back to the story, I tell my family I'm going to go back to Tulum. I mean, that's when people were like, what? You're not listening. You think you're smarter than the doctors? Chris, take the medic. And again, this is just our culture.
Yeah, Western medicine is
system.
It's.
Who do you think you are? I'm going back to Tulum. I just knew I needed to get back to Tulum. My thought was, well, if I had a mental breakdown, if I can get back to Tulum and go to the beach and ride my bike and get, mind you, I was 43 years old on my parents' couch sleeping. My dignity is gone.
Mm-hmm.
They lost my clothes in rehab, so I was wearing the same 2 outfits for weeks. Like none dignity whatsoever at all. I just want to get home. I can just get home. Maybe I'll be okay. And so, unfortunately, that pushed some core people away in my life. That's when I started losing people.
Because they felt you were going down a path that they didn't want you to go down.
And it's understandable. But
sure.
That's when certain people started washing their hands. I'm done. So I get back to Tulum. And now I'm still in benzos withdrawal from the Ativan, and I'm completely suicidal. And for the first week, I don't let any of my friends, I have a life assistant that lives in Tulum that would come, 5 days a week. I don't tell anyone I'm here. And for a week, I just think I'm going to snap into place. But basically, this house that you're looking in, that I'm recording right now, I'm just pacing for a week. And it's not getting better. It's not getting better. And so at that point, I basically make a decision that I've got to start self-medicating, figuring out what to do. I'm going to basically kill myself, self-medicate, whatever. So that particular day, I had made the decision that I was going to try to end it, but did it right this time. And the way I was going to do it was the only way I knew how, because killing yourself is really frustrating. Anyone that's ever is listening has actually tried to kill themselves. It is not easy to do. You start going down all these paths and they just don't work. Well, I'll go out into traffic. Well, what about the kid that's in the back of the car? Well, I hang myself, but my assistant's going to find me and it's going to really mess her up. I go to Google and I type it in. Well, what do you think pops up? 1-800. I was so irritated that I couldn't figure this out.
Wow.
So I went and I bought some Xanax, because that's the way I did it before at the pharmacy. And I was going to take a bottle and go out into the ocean and literally drown myself, fall off the board, pass out and drown. No one would find me. And when I took the Xanax, within about 30 minutes, my brain popped back online. It was still messed up, but it was functioning enough that I started texting friends. Hey, I'm in Tulum. And at that point, I reached out to a girl that I had dated, and she was about as far away from my ex-wife as I could get. And again, when I speak of my ex-wife, we have a really great relationship at this point. But when I say far, not in the sense against her, but because of my own, right? That's just my own shit. Textbook, right? It's just textbook male behavior after a divorce. And she is a medium, and she is a medicine woman. I'll remind you, I said medium, and I grew up in a Christian household, right? So
yeah, that's taboo.
As taboo gets. But I'm just like, I'm that type of guy. And again, I like risk. I like when I'm not, I'm a stove toucher. Most of my life, absolute stove toucher, without question. And it's caused me a lot of pain, for sure. And so you hear that, my blind's going down because the sun is coming in on my face. And so I reach out to her and I tell her everything that's going on. And at that point, we reach out to another friend that's a naturopathic doctor. And initially, I try to go that route. And my first deal is to get off all the medication that I can, because I want to get to a baseline, even though everyone's telling me not to. Intuitively, I'm like, I got to get off the medication.
Yeah.
Able to get off of everything at that point except for the benzos. So the lithium, all of it, that wasn't an issue. But during that time, I'm also now medicating through the street. I try alcohol, I try psilocybin. The one thing I try, which ironically ends up saving my life or buying me time, is ecstasy.
MDMA.
Why? Yeah, MDMA, because it's a serotonin reuptake. And that's what my brain needed, was a serotonin reuptake. And so basically what ends up happening is I take the pill, it'll make me okay for 2 or 3 days, but I can't continue to take a street drug like that. So what I'll do is, in order to go to sleep, because it's keeping me up for 2 to 3 days without sleeping, I'll take a sleeping pill, which is the Xanax. And basically this will go on for months. I will develop agoraphobia. I will have fear of leaving my house. The only conversation that's being had with my family at this point, so I'm only dialoguing now with my parents, is go to Florida, go to the rehab. So I stopped talking to them. We're now texting because it's just circular. Why aren't you going? Like, what are you doing in that house? And I push everyone out of my life. And I can't leave this condo I'm in because I'm in fear. I have agoraphobia. It's a side effect. And this woman who I'm speaking of, who for me ended up being an absolute godsend, an absolute angel, dropped her life for 3.5 months and took care of me every single day. I was like a 5-year-old child. I couldn't function. And what would end up happening is I would go in windows and waves, basically. I would take an ecstasy pill and be okay for 2 or 3 days. And then I couldn't keep taking it. So I would take the Xanax. And when I would wake up, I would be in withdrawal. So let me get this right. I take a street drug to feel normal. I didn't feel high. It just made me feel normal. But yet when I wake up sober, I'm fucked up. Like this is getting really confusing. And bro, the hell within the hell of all this is I had no idea it was benzos. So getting to about month 3 or 4, I just now 100% convinced that I am permanently disabled. I believe that I am going to be like this for the rest of my life. I buy a gun with bullets, unbeknownst to the girl taking care of me, and I hide it in the house. And here was my thinking, I'm just going to ride this out as long as I can, get whatever life I can out of this cycle, because I don't want to die. And then I'll just kill myself. This goes on, and now we're about month 7. My body is now shutting down. My organs are shut. I mean, it's getting really bad. I look bad.
Mm-hmm.
And she sits me down and she says, Chris, there's a solution. I'm listening. What's the solution? Well, I do and serve plant medicine, and a woman in Costa Rica mentored me, and I've been confiding in her, and we think you're in a state of benzos withdrawal, and if you microdose ayahuasca, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, half a teaspoonful, it'll cure you. My response is bullshit. I live in Tulum, right? This is normal here, right? You're going to throw some Tulum woo-woo ayahuasca at my permanently disabled mind and believe that it's going to work. But she's walking out the door because she can't hold space for me anymore. And I am so grateful that she lasted 3.5 months, because other people couldn't last a week, 2 weeks before they were out. They couldn't handle the situation. It was too intense. And there was no other option on the table. Yeah. So, all right, let's do it. So we go in my room, and I stopped taking the benzos, and I stopped taking the street drug. And for 6-7 days, I go on the most horrific experience physically that I've ever gone through. I'm now going into all the benzos withdrawal that's been built up for 7 months. My body starts contorting. Looks like an exorcism. I pass out, I dissociate because it's so strong. And on top of that, this is a behavior I've seen but didn't understand. I'm beating myself in the face because of the pain. I'm self-inflicting pain. And on the 6th day after microdosing half a teaspoonful of ayahuasca, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I pass out and I wake up and I'm lucid for 90 minutes. Everyone, as an entrepreneur, particularly as a male, will think the same way. If it happened for 90 minutes, why can't it happen for 3 hours? And it did. And from day 7 to day 15, I was completely cured. And I scanned my body. There's no depression. There's no anxiety. There's no psychosis. WTF? What just happened? What just happened? Now, neurologically, people, is this a miracle? No. This lady in Costa Rica has done this for hundreds and hundreds of people. The ayahuasca acted as a mediator between the benzos and my brain, and it passed back the firing of the neurotransmitters. I'm just making this as easy as possible so that my brain started functioning. And that's basically what happened from a neurological level. It saved my life. But from this moment on, going through that, I'm never going to be the same. And from here, to give a perspective from this podcast recording, April 15th of this year was a 1-year anniversary. I actually call it my rebirth day. So it was over just a year ago that I took my last dose of ayahuasca that saved my life.
Wow.
For the next year, that's how my life has been unfolding in one of the most beautiful and unexpected ways that I could ever imagine. Peace and joy and gratitude and the stripping of all of those things created a very radical transformation in my life. I can't unsee what I've seen. Yeah.
How has things, to close out the loop on your family, how has things transitioned in the positive, or, what state is the relationship that you have with your family now as you've gotten more clarity, more distance from where you were at in a state that obviously wasn't the Chris that they knew to now a new Chris, a rebirth to Chris, right? And how has that impacted your relationships with your family, and where do those stand today?
We have to, I'll go back and remind, I come from a very traditional conservative Christian family. So hard pill to swallow that my life was saved by a medium taking plant medicine in my bedroom.
Right.
Just imagine that. That does not fit into the construct. And that's what I went through. I went through it. Basically, if you ask me what I went through a radical unlearning. My constructs of everything in life got ripped to the ground. But where we stand as the day of this recording, to be radically honest, with my parents, my relationship as strong as it's ever been. they understand what's happened. It took time and conversations to win back trust, but they get it. They get it. And I'm so grateful for that, particularly my father, because he means everything to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
My oldest brother, he's told me his truth. I've not had the opportunity to share mine, and it needs to be done face to face. And I haven't had an opportunity to do that with him yet. And unfortunately, as of this day, my middle brother has not returned my calls. And my family doesn't totally understand why. And I don't sit in judgment, because obviously I can't imagine what that triggered in him and his trauma. There is no telling what happened inside of him. So I know it will happen. Everything is now happening in time and unfolding in a way that I've never seen before, because I'm not efforting and pushing and forcing my life anymore. I'm sitting back in a place of allowing and of showing up and being present and functioning from an intuitive level. And so basically it feels like this: my entire operating system, which got me to where I got for 43 years, both good and bad, that we live by, basically was ripped out and replaced with a new operating system. That's what it feels like. And I have spent the last year getting used to this new operating system that was planted inside of me.
What are some lessons learned from this new operating system that could apply to anybody? That maybe they don't have to go through this same catastrophe, as you would say, themselves, but from either wisdom and lessons learned in your own painful journey. Pain is always a part of the path of progress and is one of the greatest teachers in life for those that are willing to lean in and learn from it, as hard as it can be. But also, what are some of the learning lessons from this new operating system that you feel are really serving you, that you wish others could adopt in their own journey as they're unlocking new levels of happiness and hope and prosperity and success, whether that's in their personal life or on a business endeavor?
There's a lot, and I'll just begin to share what comes up for me with this conversation.
Yeah.
To close the loop on the whole conversation of I'm not enough, my new operating system is functioning from a place of I'm enough. What does that feel like? Here's my question for those of you listening. What would it feel like to wake up every day and not have something to prove? What would that feel like?
Very freeing.
Absolutely liberating. It is exhausting living this entrepreneurial life the way a lot of us have been trained to do it. From either the role models that we watch to the business books that we read. I've read them as many as you have. There's danger in that. And again, I'm not saying that my old operational system has become obsolete. It's just expired. What got me here won't get me there. And I'll say it this way. You're either waking up every day functioning from a low vibrational frequency of shame and guilt and fear and inadequacy, and that is driving your decision making. And if you're coming from a place of inadequacy, this is what happens. You'll get successful. Sometimes, well, let me say this. You hope to get successful. Some will, some won't. It depends. But those that get to, and people get to incredible places with the driver of inadequacy. The problem is the cost of what you're going to do to try to get to a place of feeling adequate. You'll sacrifice your kids, your marriage, you'll sacrifice your health, you'll sacrifice it all to get to that place. And then when you get there, one of the craziest things that happens is a lot of people end up losing it because they now have what they have, and guess what kicks in? Well, I'm not adequate of having it. So then they live a roller coaster of going up and down in their business. This is why I watch entrepreneurs go up and down in their businesses. I'm talking from a psychological, emotional level. They self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And that's because they don't feel adequate. So because I feel adequate and because I feel for the first time in my life I have enough, it's changed the way I'll let people play that out in their minds of what that would look like from a day-to-day basis. So that's really one of the first things that comes up for me. The second thing that comes up for me Well, I'm going to go back to a statement I didn't close out the loop on. So if I'm not functioning from a low vibrational state of inadequacy, fear, and shame, well, what would it look like to wake up every day and operate out of a place of gratitude, out of love, out of peace? And I'll definitely debunk the first thing that's going to come out of people's minds. Well, if I function from that, I'm going to become like a hippie and I'm not going to be a performer.
Which is what most masculine, strong men have been wired to believe, right?
It'll make me a pansy. I'll tell you what I realized was a pansy about me. Not having the courage to look at my own shit. Not having the courage to be radically honest. Not having the courage to tell my wife the truth, my ex-wife, and to drag her through years of everything that she had to go through, of condemning herself and blaming herself and shaming herself, and I sat there in silence. That's a pansy. Not being in tune with your feelings. That it's backwards. But this comes from Batman and Superman and Man of, you know what I'm saying? Like it's so ingrained to us in a culture. It's a misunderstanding of masculinity. And so what it does, and here's the real thing, what happened inside of me, right? And this is what needs to happen in the side of men. This whole process makes you disconnected from yourself because you don't want to feel, because you don't want to go through the wasteland. And again, we as men emotionally, by nature, are kind of pansies. Like we get sick, we're not like women, right? Like we turn into 5-year-old. Like we don't do well with that type of pain. Break our arm, like, you know, doing like jujitsu, we're fine, right? We'll go to the hospital. But this internal type stuff is difficult for us as men. We suppress it and we hide it and so forth. And so, lost my track of thought there. 1 sec, it'll come back. So the journey then becomes one of connection for men. And it's a threefold connection. If you want to get well practically, you have to reconnect with whatever has happened in the relationship with your mom and dad. Whether dead or alive, it doesn't matter. Because as I said before, that trauma, whether you want to believe it or not, whether you believe it's, you know, psychobabble bullshit, the reality is it's true. It's true. By the time you're 10 years old and everything that's happened through 0 to 10, that's what's tripping you up. And you don't want to go look at it, whether you think it's bullshit or it's too painful, which I understand. Because some of the stuff that happened to us as kids is unspeakable. Unspeakable what we had to go through as kids. You're just a child. And the reality is that boy inside of you is crying out. He's in pain. And you're doing everything you can to silence him. Silence that boy that's inside of you. And the reality is the journey is going back not only to heal the relationship with your parents, but to heal your relationship with that broken boy that's inside of you so that you can reconnect to your heart. But the reality is we think that that's not connection. We think that masculinity is accomplishing all this shit. Well, let me tell you one thing. Boys don't want their father's balls. They want his heart. And you're going just like I was, doing all these things, saying that you're doing it from your family, working the 60 hours a week, not showing up to the games. Bullshit. I call bullshit. You're doing it for yourself. But I also then say from a merciful standpoint, it's just trauma. That behavior is not your fault. I'm not judging you or shaming you for that. You've done it enough. The reality is it's driving all of this in you. And through that reconnection and healing that boy in ourselves, then basically when you heal the boy, the man appears. You heal the boy and the real man appears. And then you begin to show up and actually, again, here's the reality. You're winning at business, but you're failing at home. You go out, everyone applauds you in the masculine world in these businesses, and you feel good because everyone loves you there. But I can tell you right now, let me go and talk to your family, and they're going to tell a different story. Because the reality is we're doing well from a performance-based standpoint on our P&L, but we're failing relationally. Why? Because we're emotionless men. We have no feelings. How do you build a relationship with someone who's emotionless if you're a child or you're a wife? You can't. And so the reality is, what happened in my life when all of it got stripped away and nothing was left? I found myself in a place where I was left with only one thing, and that was my heart. That's all that anyone of my friends or myself or anyone ever wanted to see. I was just fearful to show it because it was hurt. Mm. Heart is a very beautiful thing to show with someone. And at times we've done that and we've been criticized and burnt and judged. And so I understand why we do that.
Yeah.
But to live from your heart, brother, that's the operating system that you ask of what I'm waking up every day. I'm operating from a heartfelt level. It's no longer a fucking chess game. It's not strategy. It's not who I know and being at the right place at the right time. It's waking up every day and living from a place of intuition, from a place of heart. And after that, after I reconnect with my family and I reconnect with myself as a man, then I have to find resonance with other men. Because most people listening right now, your biggest problem, and this is the biggest problem for male entrepreneurs, is isolation plus stress. We are the most isolated group of men you will ever see. Yeah. We say, well, it's lonely at the top, right?
Yep. Nobody will understand. You don't get it. You don't know what I'm going through.
It's not supposed to be that way. I know, like, it is. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I understand it's lonely at the top. That's factual, but that doesn't mean like you're supposed to stay in that state. You need community. You need brotherhood. And I don't care what community looks like. But the reality is, you've got to start with being radically honest about what's going on in your life, which is absolutely the scariest thing to do, right? Because you're going to take some heat for that.
Yeah.
And then B, after that, you're radically honest, you got to start the journey inward, and you're going to need help to do that. You can't lone wolf this thing anymore.
Yeah.
It ain't going to happen. You need professional help. You need community. You need other men that have gone through it. Men like basically myself, and you know them, the men that have been broken. We got a lot to tell you guys. And we're coming from a place of pain.
Yeah.
Like, not necessary to have to go to this level. So that's what I would say in the sense of kind of wrapping up your question of what my operating system looks like and what data.
Beautiful, dude. Yeah. Well, I love it because you're one, I want to honor you for your transparency and sharing such a heavy and personal and intimate story and journey that most people would be ashamed to share, right? Like society would be like, oh, and I know you and I know who you are and I know your heart. So it's easier for me to say, right? But somebody that doesn't know you, oh, that guy lost his mind. He's crazy. They can throw whatever label they want on you. And to share your story heroically is, I think, a beautiful kind of, it reminds me of the hero's journey and how many of us don't ever give ourselves an opportunity to go through the hero's journey and what that could really unlock for our lives or for the people around us. And I think it's something that has just got so much, we only scratched a little surface because you're telling the real, story itself, but there's so much wisdom that, I know can be pulled out of so many of the different experiences that you had. But I think most importantly, it's another example of a strong man, right? You can still tap into what people would label as feminine feelings and talking about all these things as a man and still go out and find ways to show up in a really big way, in a really great way in your life, in your business, with your kids, with your health, whatever it may be. And that two things can be true at once. You can still tap into feminine and be masculine and not be labeled as whatever you think you're going to be labeled as. So I just love that you brought up so many different things that I think are not normal talking points or discussions for hard charging entrepreneurs and men. I'm fortunate and you're fortunate enough to be in some circles with some really masculine powerhouse men that also can talk about these things, can share these things. And if anything, it just makes them more powerful. So I want to, acknowledge that power in you and appreciate what you're doing and creating now through story being shared and what you're actually doing physically in creating spaces and a business that, allows other individuals who your story or, your experience may resonate with them and their journey. Talk a little bit about how multipliers shifted into what we're, seeing in today.
One of the parts of the story that for me has probably touched my heart the most is, this is a story about, big pharma and pharmaceutical drugs. It's a story. It's got all kinds of layers to it.
Yeah, it does. We didn't get a chance to dig into all of them either. There's religion in here. There's big pharma. There's plant medicine and psychedelics. I mean, I know you and I obviously have had lots of thoughts and shared discussions around this stuff, but these are real topics that are impacting a lot of people today in a very big way, front and center right now, today, more than ever.
So one of the most beautiful things to come out of this situation so far is part of my process was to call every single person that I had lied to about my ex-wife. And because, man, I literally lied, like deceived people. And so part of my journey was to go back and to make amends and to apologize. And it would take some time. We're talking maybe about 100 people, one by one. I realized, like, I didn't know what was going on. These were difficult conversations from the standpoint. There's a lot. They're heavy. This is heavy. Like, so what I'm doing right now, I do 100 times, basically. And through that process of me taking ownership, because that's what a lot of this was about, like, this is the shit I need to take ownership for. Like, I opened up my closet, I cleaned it out, and I have kept the closet door open because I'm not living in that fear. I'm not covered in that shame and that guilt anymore. And so as I was talking to the men and trying to figure out what I was supposed to do, the conversation started to come up about brotherhood. And I had a core group of guys go, we miss it. Because multipliers was a beautiful thing. It was meeting a need that was not there. Even though the leader, being myself, was not leading from a place of authenticity, men's lives were being touched deeply because we were providing a safe environment for men to talk about the hard shit. And they loved it. Some of them, it's been the first time they've ever felt brotherhood. What is it? They couldn't get away from it. This is like, I know what isolation feels like, but brotherhood, holy shit, this is great. And these are my people. So we can talk business and like all of it, like really seriously. And so they started wanting it to come back. And I had a kind of a previous vision for like alternative modalities, just different things, like basically trauma work, healing. And then the idea of brotherhood kind of started circling up. And those guys started saying, man, if you put it back on, I'd show up. I'd show up. I'd show you. Yeah, imagine how touching this is. So basically, my evolution, we have launched a new brotherhood. It's not multipliers, it's simplifiers. The name says it all for my life and so forth. And what is so beautiful, I'm going to get really emotional about this. Because this one's fresh. This is emotion of today. In 3 days, when I feel so much gratitude. In 3 days, I'll be on a trip with my brothers in Puerto Rico. And some of those guys I haven't seen in 2 years, and they were the guys that helped fish me out of a pool 2 years ago. The joy I feel to be alive, the gratitude, joy I have to be back with these men, the fact that this thing has come full circle back to the one thing I knew I was supposed to be doing all along, which was building community and brotherhood. All the other shit, the real estate was just distracting me at a certain point. Because like more. And it wasn't always more money, it was more impact. It was just this more mentality, right? And I know less is, again, here's the problem is that we don't know, we know this stuff. The problem is we don't feel it. That's a problem. The longest journey we as men have to take is from the head to the heart. It's a painful journey. So the reality is now, like for this situation, you know, my feelings of being able to go back and be with these men here within a few days, for me, like I probably would say it's like my favorite part of this whole story so far. You know, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So like now a brotherhood can be built that ultimately I was born to do. This is my unique contribution. This is like, I know that I know that I know that this is who I am. And I'm now being able to operate from a place of who I am, from a place of love and from a place of peace and from a place of joy. And brother, I feel like I'm 25 years old again.
Well, I can't wait to see what this next chapter in your story and Simplifiers and all of the other people that you're impacting and touching, and the fact that now you're, you know, openly sharing about a very wild journey and traumatic experience, and yet all of the, you know, beauty that's been birthed out of it. And I think the hope and the inspiration that it's going to lead to so many other people, whether it's somebody struggling, you know, just on their own path and they're not an entrepreneur. It's somebody, you know, who is an entrepreneur. It's somebody that's a patriarch of a family that has all of these, you know, pressures. I just know that you sharing what you're sharing is going to impact so many people. And obviously, I've already known this from day one about you. You are a leader of men. You are a phenomenal facilitator in creating transformation and experiences for people. So I'm glad to see you back in the driver's seat, the, you know, captain in the boat, baby, because you got more impact and more greatness to share and to, you know, create on your journey. And I'm grateful to know you, brother. I'm honored that you know, chose to share your journey and your experience here with our listeners. I know it's going to impact a lot of people. And for those that maybe do want to reach out to you, whether it's learning more about Simplifiers, it's talking and connecting with you on maybe some of the other, you know, things that, you know, you shared today, what's the best way or place for them to do that?
Man, I live a life of simplicity now, so I'm not even on social media anymore. Like, so basically the one place is simplifiersbrotherhood.com. So it's just a simple form that lets me know who you are and your number. And you can either reach out through there because you're interested in community, or you can reach out because something I said resonated with you and you feel like you just need to talk to me. So what I will tell you is, like, I ain't busy. I ain't running at Mach 6. Like, you know, you're not going to get in my way. I'm more than happy to be there for someone that's listening right now that goes, holy shit, this guy just read my mail. Know that there's someone on the other side of this that feels that way.
Well, we'll be sure to link that up in the show notes, millionairemindcast.com, on Chris's episode. Chris Arnold, love you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.